The night sky above the alien colony was calm, filled with 2 silver moons and a sea of stars. The small houses glowed softly, their walls made of crystal stone, their windows shining like lanterns. Inside one of these homes lived Lyra, a little alien girl with large golden eyes and skin that shimmered faintly under the moons. She lived with her mother, a gentle woman who always wore a strange amulet around her neck. The amulet was no ordinary jewel. It was carved from a stone that glowed softly, pulsing with a light that seemed alive. Whenever Lyra asked about it, her mother would only smile and say, "It protects us, little one." But deep in her heart, Lyra knew there was more. The way her mother touched it whenever danger was near, the way strangers stared at it when they passed. It was not just decoration. Lyra's mother carried secrets, and the amulet carried even more. Few knew that the jewel was a relic from an older age, linked to the survival of their people. Legends whispered that the stone once shielded their ancestors during a great war. Now it was the last one left. If lost, their family's protection would vanish, and perhaps something worse would come. One evening, as the wind swept dust across the colony, strange eyes watched their home hidden in the shadows. A group of robbers whispered to each other. They were not noble thieves, they were cruel men, scarred from battles, dressed in ragged armor. They had heard stories of the glowing amulet, stories that spoke of its price in the black markets of the stars. To them it was not a relic, not a protector, but a fortune waiting to be stolen. Inside, Lyra sat near the window. Humming softly, her mother prepared food, her hands moving slowly, but her eyes kept glancing at the door. She could feel something in the air, something wrong. The amulet glowed brighter that night. "As if it too sensed danger, Mother," Lyra whispered. "Why is the jewel brighter today?" Her mother paused, placing a hand on the stone. "It shines when it feels danger," she said quietly. "Promise me if something happens." "You must hide, Lyra." The girl nodded, but her heart filled with fear. The amulet pulsed again like a heartbeat, echoing in the silence of their small home. Far away in the colony's dark streets, the robbers sharpened blades and loaded weapons. Their leader, a tall man with a scar across his face, grinned. "Tonight we take the jewel," he said, "and no one will stop us." The others laughed, but their eyes were hungry. None of them cared for the alien child or her mother. All they saw was treasure. The moons rose higher, shadows grew longer, and the colony fell into silence. Lyra curled up beside her mother, but sleep did not come. She stared at the glowing amulet, watching it flicker with strange colors. Her mother placed a gentle hand on her head. "Do not fear, little one," she whispered. "As long as the amulet is with us, we are safe." But outside, footsteps crept closer. The robbers had begun their move through narrow streets. They stalked like wolves hunting prey. One carried a heavy iron bar. Another carried a sharp blade. Their eyes glowed in the dark as they neared the crystal house. Inside, the amulet glowed brighter still, casting shadows across the walls. Lyra felt her chest tighten, and she whispered, "Mother, someone is coming." Her mother stiffened, her ears catching the faint scrape of boots on stone. She rose quickly, locking the door, closing the windows, but she knew it was not enough. The amulet shone like fire now, its light spilling through the cracks of the house far away. Even strangers could see the glow and wonder what power rested inside. The robbers smiled wickedly. They had found their prize. Lyra's mother clutched the amulet and pulled her daughter close. "Remember," she whispered. "Hide if they come." Lyra shook her head, tears filling her golden eyes. "I don't want to leave you," she said. But her mother kissed her forehead and pushed her gently toward the secret hiding space beneath the floor. Outside, the robbers surrounded the house, their leader raising his hand. "Break the door," he ordered. His voice low but sharp. The sound of boots thundered. The walls shook and glass shattered. The home that had always been safe was now a trap. Lyra, trembling in the dark beneath the floor, held her breath. Her mother stood alone in the room above, holding the amulet in her hand. The jewel glowed like a tiny sun, burning brighter and brighter. The robbers smashed through the door, their shadows flooding in, their weapons raised. The leader's eyes locked on the amulet. "That's mine," he growled, reaching out, and in that moment, the air itself seemed to pause. Would the jewel protect them? Or would the robbers take everything? The secret of the amulet was about to be tested, and the fate of mother and child hung by a thread. The night was heavy with silence, but inside Lyra's home fear breathed like a living thing. The robbers had broken the door. their boots stomping on the crystal floor, their eyes sharp and greedy. The leader's scarred face twisted into a grin as his gaze fixed on the glowing amulet in the mother's hand. The jewel pulsed like fire, lighting the shadows, making the intruders look like monsters from a nightmare. Lyra hid under the wooden floor, her small hands pressed against her mouth to keep herself from crying out. Through the cracks she could see their boots and hear their harsh voices. Her heart pounded so loudly she feared the robbers might hear it. She wanted to scream, to run to her mother, but her mother's last words repeated in her head. "Hide, Lyra, hide." The robbers spread through the small house like hungry wolves. One smashed plates from the shelves. Another kicked over a chair, their laughter cruel and sharp. The leader stepped closer to the mother, his hand stretched out. "Give me the jewel," he said coldly, "and I might let you live." But the mother stood tall, her hands trembling but her eyes filled with fire. "This stone does not belong to you," she said. "It is not for sale, not for thieves," the leader chuckled, his voice low and dangerous. "Then it belongs to your corpse," he whispered, and lifted his blade. Lyra's body shook with terror, her golden eyes wide in the darkness. She wanted to close her eyes, but she could not. She could not stop watching. The amulet flared brighter, throwing light across the room. The robbers shielded their eyes for a moment, hissing like snakes, but then they lunged forward together, their weapons ready. The mother raised her arm, clutching the jewel, and shouted words in her ancient tongue. For a brief second, a shield of light flickered in front of her, blocking the first strike. The blade struck the barrier with a hiss, sending sparks across the room. The robbers stumbled back, startled. But the shield lasted only a heartbeat, then flickered out, leaving the mother gasping for air.
"She is weak," one of the robbers sneered. "The jewel is strong."
"But the woman is not." The leader's grin widened. "Then take it from her hand." They rushed her again, 3 against 1, their shadows falling long and dark across the crystal floor. The house shook with the sound of battle, crashing furniture, splintering wood, breaking glass. Lyra bit her lip until it bled, holding back her cry. Her body begged her to run to her mother, but she stayed hidden, obeying her last promise. Her small fingers dug into the wood as she prayed for someone. Anyone to come. The colony outside was silent, neighbors too afraid to interfere. Everyone knew the robber's name. Everyone feared their wrath. The leader's blade cut across the air, grazing the mother's arm, red spilling onto the floor. She stumbled but refused to let go of the amulet. Her eyes burned with pain but also with defiance. "This will never be yours," she hissed, her voice echoed, trembling but fierce. The robbers laughed, circling her. The leader raised his weapon high, ready to end it all. And in that moment a new sound broke the night, the sharp echo of footsteps. Firm and fast from the broken door a tall figure entered. It was a human, a man with strong shoulders and calm eyes. His clothes were worn, his face scarred by travel, but his gaze was steady, unshaken by the chaos before him. For a heartbeat everyone froze. The robbers stared at him, confused. The mother looked at him in shock, and Lyra, hidden in the floor, felt her breath catch. A human, here in their colony, rare and almost forgotten. But now one stood at their broken doorway. The leader's grin returned, this time twisted with mockery. "And what do we have here?" he sneered. "A lost wanderer who thinks he can play hero?" The human did not flinch. He looked at the mother, then at the amulet, then finally at the robbers. "Leave them," he said simply. His voice calm but firm. The room went silent, the words hanging heavy in the air. The robbers burst out laughing, their voices sharp and cruel. "You?" One jeered. "One human against us all?" Another spat on the floor. "You should walk away before you join the dead." But the human did not move. He stepped closer, his eyes never leaving the leader's. "I said," he repeated, his voice colder now. "Leave them." The leader's smile vanished. His scar tightening across his face, he pointed his blade at the human. "You will regret those words," he growled. "Humans bleed just like anyone else." The robbers raised their weapons, circling him like predators. The mother gasped, clutching the amulet, hope and fear battling in her eyes. And Lyra, from her hiding place, whispered to herself, "Please, help us." The house filled with tension so thick it felt like the air itself might break. One human against many robbers, one human daring to stand where no one else had. The night had already been filled with fear, but now it held something new, a spark, a chance, a moment that could change everything. The leader snarled and raised his blade. The robbers tightened their grip, ready to strike, and the human, calm and steady, clenched his fists. The battle for the amulet, for the mother, and for the child hiding in the dark, was about to begin. The crystal house shook as the robbers moved closer, their weapons gleaming in the strange light of the amulet. The alien mother stood weak and bleeding, clutching the jewel in her trembling hand, and across from her stood the lone human. Daniel, his shoulders straight, his eyes sharp, the robbers laughed. But their laughter carried unease, for there was something different in the way the human stood. He was unarmed, but he did not fear them. Lyra watched through the cracks in the wooden floor, her tiny body shivering in silence. Her golden eyes locked on Daniel. She had never seen a human before, only heard stories from her mother. Some said humans were reckless, some said they were weak. But what she saw now was a man who did not back down. Even with death standing in front of him, the leader of the robbers sneered. Lifting his blade, "Move aside, human," he growled. "This does not concern you." Daniel's voice was calm, steady, unshaken. "It concerns me now," he said. "You want the jewel, but you'll step over my body to take it." The room froze, the words hanging like thunder. The robbers blinked, surprised by his defiance. One burst into laughter. "You? One human against 7 of us? You are mad." Daniel's eyes did not waver. "Maybe I am," he said, "but I will not let you harm them." The alien mother's breath caught in her throat, her heart pounding. She did not know this man, yet here he was, ready to fight for her and her daughter. Her hands tightened on the amulet, the jewel pulsing in rhythm with her racing heart. Hope flickered inside her, a fragile flame. Could this human truly protect them? The leader's grin returned. Cruel and mocking. "Very well," he said. "If you want to die first, so be it." With a sharp motion, he ordered his men forward. The robbers closed in, circling Daniel like predators around prey. The air thickened, heavy with the smell of fear and violence. Daniel clenched his fists, his body steady, his mind clear. He had fought before in places far darker than this. He had seen men twice his size fall when courage burned brighter than fear. And now that same fire filled him again. He was not fighting for himself. He was fighting for a child hiding in the floor and a mother who refused to bow. The first robber lunged with a knife, quick and sharp. Daniel sidestepped, grabbing the man's wrist and twisting hard. The knife clattered to the floor, and with a swift motion, Daniel slammed his elbow into the robber's face. The man crashed into a wall, blood spilling from his nose. The others snarled in fury. Rushing forward, Lyra's eyes widened, her small hands covering her mouth to keep from gasping. The human was fast, faster than she imagined. He moved with precision, dodging blows, striking back with fists and knees. He fought like a storm, using no weapons but his body. Each hit carried the weight of his resolve. He was not a trained soldier, yet his will made him stronger than any blade. The robbers struck together, swinging iron bars and clubs. Daniel blocked with his arms, pain shooting through him, but he refused to fall. He kicked one man in the chest, sending him crashing over a broken table. Another swung a bar at his head, but Daniel ducked, grabbing the weapon and ripping it from the man's grip. He swung it back with brutal force, the sound echoing through the shattered room. The mother watched in awe, her eyes wide with disbelief. The human was outnumbered, yet he did not falter. Each time they knocked him down, he rose again. Blood trickled from his forehead, bruises forming on his arms, but he stood tall, unbroken. The leader stepped forward now, anger flashing across his scarred face. "You think this makes you strong?" he spat. "You are just flesh and bone, human. And flesh breaks." Daniel wiped the blood from his lip, his breathing heavy but his gaze burning like fire. "Maybe flesh breaks," he said, "but courage does not." The words cut through the room like a blade. Even the robbers paused, their smirks fading for a heartbeat. Lyra felt her chest swell, her fear mixing with awe. For the first time since the robbers entered, she believed they might survive. The leader roared and charged at Daniel. His blade raised high. Their clash shook the room, metal against bone, fury against courage. Daniel caught the leader's wrist, muscles straining, their faces inches apart. The leader snarled, teeth bared. But Daniel's eyes burned with something stronger. Not greed, not hatred, something the robbers could never understand. He was fighting not for gain, but for others. The struggle was fierce, the blade pressing closer, but with a final surge of strength, Daniel twisted, forcing the weapon aside. He slammed his shoulder into the leader, sending him stumbling back. The robbers gasped, their certainty shaken. How could one human defy them all? Daniel stood tall, chest heaving, blood dripping down his face, but his voice was steady as ever. "You will not take the amulet," he said. "Not while I stand." Silence filled the house, broken only by the ragged breaths of the beaten men. Lyra's mother clutched the jewel tighter, her eyes shimmering with tears. In that moment, she knew this human was no ordinary wanderer. He was a shield, a protector, something rare and powerful. And in the shadows beneath the floor, Lyra whispered with trembling lips, "The human will save us," but outside, in the cold night, more footsteps echoed in the distance. The robbers had not come alone, and though Daniel stood unbroken, the true storm had only begun. The crystal house groaned under the weight of violence. Its walls cracked, its windows shattered. The floor was littered with broken glass, overturned chairs, and blood drops that shone in the moonlight. Daniel stood tall, his chest rising and falling, bruises covering his arms, blood on his lip. The robbers circled him, anger in their eyes, their laughter gone, replaced with fury. The leader wiped his mouth, glaring at the human with a look of hatred. "You dare stand against me, wanderer?" he snarled. "You are nothing but dust in the wind." But Daniel did not move. His fists clenched, his eyes locked on the scarred man. "As long as I stand," Daniel said, his voice low but strong. "You will not touch them." Lyra trembled in the hiding place beneath the floorboards. Her golden eyes wide, she wanted to cry out, to tell the human to run, but something inside her stopped her. Her heart beat fast, not only with fear but with a strange feeling she had never known. It was hope. Hope born from the courage of a man she had never met before this night. The leader barked an order, and the robbers attacked as one. They came like a storm. Weapons raised, shouting with rage, Daniel moved quickly, blocking the first strike with his arm. The blow rattling his bones, he struck back, slamming his fist into one man's jaw, sending him crashing into the wall. Another swung a club at his ribs, the crack echoing in the small house. Pain tore through him, but Daniel gritted his teeth and did not fall. The fight was brutal, fists and blades clashing in the flickering light. Daniel used the broken furniture as weapons, grabbing a chair leg and swinging it with force. It cracked across a robber's shoulder, knocking him to the ground. But another leapt on Daniel from behind. Dragging him down, they wrestled on the floor. The robber's knife flashing in the dark. Daniel twisted, grabbing the man's wrist and slamming his head against the stone. The knife slipped free. Clattering across the floor, the mother gasped, clutching the amulet tighter against her chest. Her hands shook, her body weak, but her eyes burned with defiance. She whispered words in her ancient tongue, the jewel glowing brighter. The light spilled across the room, making the robbers flinch, their faces twisted in fear. But the leader only sneered. "That light cannot save you," he growled. "It only makes me want it more." Daniel struggled to his feet, his breath ragged, blood dripping from a cut on his forehead. The leader advanced now, blade in hand. Moving with deadly intent, the two clashed. The sound of metal striking bone, fists against steel. Daniel caught the blade with both hands, forcing it away from the mother. His muscles strained, veins bulging, sweat pouring from his brow. The robber leader snarled, pushing harder. "You cannot win, human," he spat. "You are only one." Daniel's eyes burned, his voice steady even through the pain. "One is enough." With a roar, he twisted, slamming his shoulder into the leader's chest. The man staggered back, his weapon slipping from his hand. Daniel grabbed it and flung it across the room, sending it clattering into the shadows. The leader roared with rage, swinging his fists. The two men collided again, a storm of blows echoing in the ruined home. Lyra's small body shook beneath the floor, tears streaming down her cheeks. But she whispered again and again, "The human will save us. The human will save us." Her voice was like a prayer, carried by the beating of the amulet's light. The robbers regrouped, 3 rushing Daniel at once. One slammed a bar across his back. Another struck his side. Daniel grunted in pain. Falling to one knee, the leader grinned, stepping forward to finish him. But Daniel's hand shot up, grabbing the leader's ankle and pulling with all his strength. The scarred man crashed to the floor with a shout. Daniel leapt up, kicking another robber square in the chest, sending him flying back. The house was chaos, filled with shouts, groans, the crack of fists and the glow of the jewel. The mother clutched the amulet and cried out, her voice breaking, "Daniel, you must not let it fall into their hands." Her words cut through the noise, reaching his ears like a command. Daniel gritted his teeth, Forcing himself to stand once more, his body screamed in pain, but his spirit burned brighter than ever. The leader rose, his face twisted with rage. Blood on his mouth, he lunged for the amulet, his hand stretching toward the mother. But Daniel was faster. Grabbing the jewel from her hands and stepping between them, the amulet pulsed in his grip. Glowing brighter than ever before, the light filled the room, casting the robber's shadows long and monstrous on the walls. The leader froze, his eyes wide. The jewel responded not to him but to the human. The glow wrapped around Daniel's body like fire. Giving him strength, the robbers stumbled back, their courage shaking. They had thought the human was weak, but now the jewel itself chose him. Daniel lifted the amulet high. "The light blazing, enough," he said, his voice like thunder. The robbers hesitated, fear creeping into their faces. But the leader snarled, unwilling to surrender. "This is not over," he spat. "I will return, and I will bring an army." He dragged his injured men toward the door, retreating into the night, their threats echoing in the silence they left behind. The house was quiet again, broken and battered but alive. Daniel stood in the center, the amulet glowing in his hand. The mother, weak but breathing, looked at him with wide eyes filled with awe and gratitude. And from beneath the floor, Lyra crawled out. Her small steps trembling, she stared up at the human, her golden eyes shining with tears. "You saved us," she whispered. Her voice soft but sure. Daniel knelt to her level, his face tired but his eyes steady. "No," he said gently. "I only stood where no one else would." The amulet's glow dimmed, returning to a soft pulse, but its secret had been revealed. It had chosen the human, and with it a new fight had begun. The night was silent after the storm of violence. The robbers had fled, leaving behind broken walls, shattered glass, and bloodstains across the crystal floor. The house groaned in its ruin. Yet inside, 3 lives still breathed. Daniel, the human, stood with the glowing amulet in his hand, its light soft but steady. The mother leaned against the wall, her body weak and wounded, while little Lyra clung to her side, her golden eyes wide with fear and wonder. The amulet pulsed like a living heart in Daniel's grip. Its glow was no longer just light, it felt warm. Alive, almost aware, Daniel looked at it in silence, his chest rising with heavy breaths. He had only meant to protect them, yet somehow the jewel had chosen him. Why? He did not know. The mother's voice broke the silence, soft but filled with urgency. "You should not be holding that," she whispered, her eyes fixed on the jewel. Daniel frowned, glancing at her. "Why? I only took it to keep it from them." She shook her head, her breath uneven. "No, you don't understand. That amulet is not just a jewel." Lyra looked up at her mother, her small hands clutching her dress. "Then what is it, Mother?" she asked, her voice trembling. The woman pressed her hand over the wound on her arm, blood seeping through her fingers. Her eyes, deep and tired, turned to Daniel. "It is the protector stone," she said, her words heavy like iron. "An ancient relic, older than this colony, older than our people's memory." Daniel's brow furrowed, his grip on the amulet tightening. "What does it protect?" he asked. The mother's voice grew softer, almost a whisper. "Our bloodline, our people, our hope," she said. "Long ago, when enemies came to destroy us, the stone shielded our ancestors, kept them safe in the darkest hours. It carries power, but not for greed. It only shines for those with courage in their heart." Lyra's eyes widened as she looked at Daniel. "The stone shone for you," she whispered, her voice trembling with awe. Daniel's chest tightened, the weight of her words pressing on him. He had only acted out of instinct, out of the simple refusal to let injustice happen before his eyes. Yet somehow, that was enough for the ancient jewel to burn in his hands like fire. The mother's voice grew weaker, her head leaning against the wall. "You must understand," she said. "If the robbers take this stone, they will not keep it. They will sell it to darker powers, powers that want more than money. If that happens, my people will lose the last shield we have. We will fall." Her words hung in the air. Heavy with dread, Daniel stared at the jewel, its light flickering softly. He was just one man, a stranger on this colony, a wanderer with no home. Yet somehow fate had placed this relic in his hand, a relic that could decide the future of an entire people. "I didn't ask for this," Daniel muttered, his voice low. But his eyes burned with the same fire that had carried him through the fight. "Still," he said, lifting the jewel, I will not let it fall into their hands. The mother's lips curved into the faintest smile. A smile of gratitude. Her hand trembled as she reached out, touching Daniel's arm. Then you are its guardian now, she whispered, her voice fading. The human chosen by the stone. Lyra clutched her mother's hand, tears welling in her eyes. Please don't leave me. Mother, she whispered, her voice breaking. The woman's gaze softened, filled with love. I will not leave you, little one, she said, though her breath was thin. But if I cannot protect you, Daniel will. Trust him. Daniel knelt beside them, placing the amulet gently in front of Lyra. The jewel pulsed warmly, glowing brighter near her small hands. Her eyes widened and she reached out, touching it lightly with her fingers. The stone glowed even stronger, as if recognizing her too. Daniel's chest tightened. Perhaps the relic did not belong to one alone, but to all who carried true courage. But the peace of the moment did not last. A cold wind blew through the shattered doorway, carrying with it the echo of voices outside. Lyra flinched, her small body pressed against her mother. Daniel rose quickly, his hand instinctively going to the amulet again. Through the broken walls, he could hear them, the robbers, regrouping, their leader's voice sharp and cruel. They still have it, the scarred man growled, and this time we take it. I don't care if we burn the house down with them inside. Daniel's jaw tightened, his eyes narrowing. They had not run far, only retreated to gather more strength. Now they were coming back, louder, fiercer, with rage boiling in their voices. The mother looked at Daniel, her eyes tired but filled with urgency. You cannot fight them alone again, she said. They will bring more men, more weapons. This colony fears them. No one will stand with us. But Daniel's voice was firm, steady, unbroken. Then I'll make them stand, he said. If fear keeps them silent, then courage will break that silence. He turned toward the shattered door. Gripping the amulet tightly, the jewel pulsed like a heartbeat, its glow spilling across his face. Lyra's small voice trembled behind him. Will you protect us again, Daniel? She asked. He looked back, his eyes steady, his voice sure. As long as I breathe, he said, I will fight for you both. Outside, the robbers' boots thundered closer, their shouts echoing in the night. The mother leaned back, her eyes closing, whispering words only the jewel seemed to hear. And Daniel stepped forward, the amulet glowing in his hand. The truth had been spoken, the burden revealed. Now, the real war was about to begin. The night outside the broken home grew heavy with footsteps. Boots stomped against the stone streets, voices rose in anger, and the glow of torches flickered in the distance. The robbers were returning, not in silence this time, but with a storm of rage. They had been humiliated by one man, and now they came with more numbers, more weapons and more fury. Inside, Daniel stood near the shattered doorway, the amulet pulsing in his hand behind him. The mother leaned weakly against the wall, and Lyra clung to her side, her golden eyes full of fear. The house still bore the scars of the earlier battle. Glass glittering on the floor, furniture splintered, blood staining the crystal walls, but worse than the ruin was the sound of the growing army outside. Their chants echoing through the colony. The leader's voice cut through the noise, sharp and cruel. Tonight, we take the jewel, we burn that house if we must. Nothing will save them now, his men roared in agreement, their fury shaking the ground. Daniel clenched his fist around the amulet, feeling its warmth pulse against his skin. He had fought once already, and his body still carried bruises, cuts, and pain, but there was no thought of retreat in him. He looked at Lyra, trembling but holding her mother's hand, and he spoke with steady resolve. They want war, he said. Then they will have to fight me first. The mother shook her head, her voice weak but urgent. You cannot face them alone again. They will not stop this time. They will kill you. Daniel's eyes burned with fire. Then I will fall standing, he said. But I will not let them take what is not theirs. Outside, the robbers spread across the street, their torches lighting the colony. Neighbors peeked from windows and doorways, their eyes wide but their voices silent. They had seen this gang terrorize families before. They had seen blood spilled, and now they saw one human standing against them, but still, fear chained their hearts. The leader stepped forward, his scarred face twisted with rage. He raised his hand, pointing at the house. Break it down, take the stone. Leave no one alive! The robbers surged forward like a flood, weapons clashing, voices rising. But before they could storm the door, Daniel stepped out into the street. The amulet glowed in his hand, its light cutting through the dark. The crowd gasped, whispers spreading quickly. The human again. He dares to stand against them. Daniel's voice rang out strong and clear. If you want the stone, you come through me. The street fell silent for a heartbeat, his words echoing against the walls. The leader sneered, raising his blade. Kill him, he snarled. The robbers charged, their boots pounding, their weapons raised. Daniel stood tall, gripping the amulet tighter. Its glow spread around him like fire, wrapping him in light. He felt its power surge into his veins. Not strength of muscle alone, but strength of spirit. He moved with speed and force, striking back as the first robber swung. He caught the man's wrist, twisted, and threw him to the ground. Another swung a heavy bar at his head, but Daniel ducked, ramming his shoulder into the man's chest, sending him crashing into a wall. The fight exploded in the street, torches falling, shadows dancing wildly across the stone. Daniel's fists struck with precision, each blow carrying the fire of his will. But the robbers kept coming more than before, their numbers pressing hard against him. From the houses nearby, eyes watched, wide and fearful. Some gasped at the sight of the human fighting like a storm, unyielding even against so many. But others looked away, ashamed of their silence. They whispered among themselves, "If one man can stand, why do we hide? If he dares, why not us?" The leader saw the crowd watching, and his fury grew hotter. He shouted, "Do not fear him, he is only one." "Break him," the robbers obeyed, swarming Daniel, clubs and knives striking. Daniel staggered, his body screaming with pain. But he refused to fall. He swung his fist, sending another robber sprawling. He lifted the amulet high, its glow blazing brighter. The robbers flinched, their faces twisted with fear. The mother's voice rang out from inside the house, weak but fierce. "Do not let them win, Daniel. The stone stands with the brave." Her words cut through the night, carrying beyond the fight. Neighbors whispered again, their courage stirring. A man stepped forward from the crowd, his voice trembling but strong. "She is right. We cannot hide forever." Another followed. Then another, soon more colony dwellers moved closer, their hands gripping stones, sticks, anything they could find. They looked at Daniel, bloodied but unbroken, and they saw what they had never dared to believe, that one human's courage could light a fire in their own hearts. Daniel staggered back to his feet, his body battered but his spirit unbroken. He looked at the growing crowd behind him. "They fear us divided," he shouted, his voice carrying him, "but together they cannot win," the colonists roared, their fear breaking like chains. They rushed forward, joining Daniel, striking at the robbers, pushing them back. The leader's eyes widened in fury as he saw his power crumble. "You fools," he roared, "you will pay for this." But his men faltered, their strength breaking as the colony rose against them. The street turned into chaos, shouts and clashes echoing under the twin moons. Daniel fought at the front, the amulet blazing in his grip. Each strike he made carried not just his own strength, but the will of those who finally stood with him. The tide had turned. The robbers, once feared, now faced a united people, and in the center of it all, the human fought like fire itself, not for wealth, not for glory, but for a mother, a child, and the hope of an entire colony. The night had changed. Fear was no longer master, courage was, but the battle was not yet over. The leader still stood, his eyes burning with hate, his blade ready for one last strike, and Daniel knew the final clash was yet to come. The street blazed with firelight, torches fallen and scattered across the stone. The robbers' shouts clashed with the cries of the colony. Neighbors now turned fighters. For the first time in years, the people stood together, no longer hiding behind doors and shutters. At the center of it all was Daniel, the lone human, his body battered but his spirit burning. The amulet pulsed in his grip, glowing brighter with every heartbeat. The leader of the robbers pushed through the chaos, his scarred face twisted with fury. His men faltered, beaten back by colonists with stones and sticks, but he did not yield. His blade gleamed in the firelight as he raised it high. His eyes locked on Daniel. "This ends tonight," he roared. "Your courage dies with you, human." Daniel turned, blood dripping from his brow, his chest heaving. He gripped the amulet tighter, its light wrapping around him like a shield. He stepped forward into the open street, facing the leader alone. Behind him, the colony stood, bruised but unbroken, their voices rising in support, and in the window of the broken house, Lyra watched with wide golden eyes, whispering, "Please, Daniel." "Don't fall," the leader charged, his blade slicing through the air. Daniel met him with bare hands, catching the strike, the force rattling his bones. They clashed like storm against stone, sparks flying. fists and steel echoing through the night. The scarred man struck again and again, his fury endless, but Daniel stood tall, blocking, striking back, never bowing. The fight grew brutal, their bodies slamming into walls, crashing into the dirt. Every strike carried the weight of years of fear, greed, and cruelty. But Daniel's strikes carried something greater: the will to protect, the will to fight for others, and the amulet pulsed brighter each time his fist landed. It was no longer just his fight. It was the fight of everyone who believed. The crowd roared as Daniel pushed the leader back. The scarred man stumbled, rage flashing in his eyes. "You think courage makes you strong?" He spat. "Courage cannot stop death." Daniel wiped blood from his mouth, his eyes steady as fire. "Courage makes death worth facing," he said, his voice like thunder. The leader screamed and lunged again, his blade flashing. Daniel caught his arm, twisting hard, bones cracking under the force. The weapon fell, clattering to the ground. The crowd gasped as Daniel slammed his fist into the robber's chest, sending him crashing to the dirt. The leader groaned, his body broken, but his rage still burned. He crawled forward, reaching for the amulet. His fingers trembling, but as his skin touched the stone, the jewel flared with searing light. The man screamed, pulling his hand back, his flesh burned by its fire. The colony gasped in awe. The jewel rejected him, the amulet had chosen its side. And it was not his. Daniel stood over him. His chest rising with heavy breaths, the scarred man glared up. His pride shattered, his power broken. "You cannot kill me," he spat. "More will come, they will hunt you. They will hunt this colony." Daniel raised the amulet high, its glow bathing the street. "Then let them come," he said, his voice steady. "We will stand together." The crowd erupted with cheers. Their fear gone, replaced with fire, the robbers, seeing their leader defeated, broke and fled into the night. Their voices vanished into the dark, leaving only silence and the sound of triumph. Daniel dropped to one knee, his body aching, his strength nearly gone. The colony rushed forward, helping him, lifting him up. They looked at him with awe and gratitude, whispering words of thanks. No longer did they see a stranger, no longer a wanderer. He was their shield, their spark, their courage. Lyra ran to him, her small hands clutching his arm. "You saved us," she said, her voice breaking with emotion. Daniel smiled weakly, his hand resting gently on her head. "No," he whispered. "We saved each other." The mother, still weak but alive, stepped forward, her eyes shining with tears. She placed her hand on Daniel's shoulder, her voice soft. "The amulet does not choose lightly," she said. "It burns only for those with true hearts tonight. It chose you." Daniel looked at the jewel in his hand, its glow now calm and steady. He did not feel like a chosen hero, only a man who refused to walk away, but perhaps that was what true courage was. The colony gathered around, their fear gone, their voices strong. They began to rebuild, to lift the wounded, to stand together as they had not done in years. The robbers were gone, their reign broken, and in the center stood a human, the one who had shown them what it meant to fight. The moons hung high above, silver light falling across the street. Lyra looked up at Daniel, her golden eyes shimmering. "Will you stay with us?" she asked softly. Daniel looked at her, then at the people, then at the amulet pulsing in his hand. He smiled faintly, though his face was weary. "As long as you need me," he said, "I will stand." The crowd cheered again, their voices echoing through the night. In that moment, hope was no longer a whisper. It was a fire burning in every heart. One man, one human, had changed them all. The robbers had wanted a jewel of wealth, but they had given the colony something greater. They had given them courage, and so the story ended not with silence, but with voices, not with fear, but with strength. A human's courage had lit the path, and an alien child's hope had kept it burning. Together, they had turned the darkest night into the beginning of a brighter dawn.